All right, guys, we have another big surrender from the ATF, and this time, is it going to unleash capitalism to attack the National Firearms Act, to attack the Gun Control Act? There's so many exciting things to be talking about. We are pushing the battle line far ahead, like we've literally never seen before in the Second Amendment. So guys, let's get into it. So we've got some exciting things to talk about, but first we have to introduce what the heck it is that we are talking about, because I know most of you probably don't know what these two firearms are. Produced and introduced by Franklin Armory, Reformation and the Antithesis firearms represent, frankly, kind of a landmark moment in the ongoing conflict between innovative firearm design and federal regulation. These products have not only disrupted traditional firearms classifications, but the legal battle surrounding them is changing the way that manufacturers and attorneys both understand and challenge our friends at the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. So the Reformation, let's start there, is a firearm that is engineered to deliberately fall outside the standard definitions of what is a rifle and what is a shotgun established by federal law. Why? Because if something falls in one of those categories, now it's going to be regulated like it's falling in one of those categories. If it's not falling in one of those categories, you're kind of working with a bit of a clean slate when it comes to regulation. Do you see how that could be nice for lots of people in lots of places, right? So Franklin Armory accomplished this by cutting straight grooves. So not twisted rifling into the barrels, but straight grooves. So as a result, from a kinetic standpoint, the bullet does not spin because there's no twist that's imparted for stability, but instead tumbles after leaving the barrel. You heard me right. So if you're looking at your screen, you can see some targets with some keyholing effect. That's when the bullet is not going in straight, it's going in sideways. We're gonna get to that in just a quick moment. But because this lacks the twist, it's not a rifle. And because shotguns need to have a smooth bore, as well as the capacity to fire a fixed shotgun shell, this has neither. See how it falls in this in-between space? So when you're shooting the Reformation, let's be clear, if you go to the Franklin Armory website, you'll notice they advertise it as a self-defense gun. Why? Because you don't get the best groups and performance at range without spin, okay? That's why we have rifling. All right, so you start to see keyhole, tumbling, all this other kind of stuff that I mentioned. In the link to Guns America, they're talking about here's performance on packed newspaper. They basically saw, I think, about 12 inches of penetration and all sorts of nasty stuff happening. You be the judge whether or not this sounds like a great self-defense option for you. Groups seem to vary according to the review linked between about 3 to 6 inches at 50 yards. And then they noted that it really can drop off after that. So we're definitely talking about self-defense range. But guess what? Nearly every single home defense, self-defense encounter, you are way inside 50 yards statistically. Way inside 50 yards. So to that point, it checks the box. So that's the Reformation. The Antithesis, meanwhile, yes, that's the design. I'm not saying the antithesis of the Reformation. The name of the firearm, can't call it a rifle. The name of I almost called it a rifle again. The name of the firearm is the Antithesis. It's designed with a 14.5 inch rifled barrel, capable of firing both 410 shot shell, so very small shotgun shell, as well as 45 Colt cartridges. We've seen this in a number of other firearms as well. Like the Reformation, the Antithesis' design places it by design outside the regulatory framework definitions that typically govern short-barreled rifles and shotguns. So what's the payoff? It's not a short-barreled rifle. Neither of these are short-barrel rifles because they're not strictly speaking a rifle. And they're not short-barrel shotguns because they're technically not really shotguns. So they're neither. So you get the benefit of a short-barrel rifle and a short-barrel shotgun, but with none of the regulatory framework as far as Form 1s, Form 4s, filing 5320.20s, all that kind of stuff to travel interstate, take it across state lines, and if you don't, potential felony charges. So you get around all that kind of stuff, and as long as you understand what the parameters are, what the limits are of these firearms, hey, good to go at that point. So that's cool, but why are we talking about it right now? So these firearms were invented a handful of years ago. Back in 2019, linked below, the ATF said, nah, the Reformation firearm, we recognize that it's definitely not a rifle because the bore doesn't twist, the rifling doesn't twist, so to speak. And it's not a shotgun because it's not smooth bore, and it can't also fit, it's not designed to fire fixed shotgun shells, the Reformation. But we're going to call it a shotgun because basically we've got no other category to shoehorn it into. So because they called it a shotgun, the result is that it becomes regulated by the Gun Control Act, the GCA, the Gun Control Act. And because it's regulated by the GCA, follow me on this, if the barrel is less than 18 inches, because now we've got it, hey, it's a shotgun. Well, what do you call a shotgun that has a barrel less than 18 inches? We call it a short barrel shotgun. Okay, so now we're triggering the NFA, but this is a GCA shotgun. And guess what? This is now straddling two different categories, and the ATF says, no one can own it aside from certain licensed FFLs because we don't have paperwork to describe something like this. So that's what they did. That was the crux of the argument here, was Franklin Armory deliberately engineered something that straddled different categories, different definitions as far as what was out there. And the ATF said, you know what? We know what you're trying to do. We're going to shoehorn you into one that you're not. But we need to regulate you. This is 2019, so this is how we're going to do it. So Franklin Armory and FRAC, that's the Firearms Regulatory Accountability Coalition, FRAC, FRAC, another one of those great, strong Pro-2A groups that are out there, sued because of this, saying, look, you can't just do that. Again, you are overstepping your bounds, Mr. ATF. And guess what? According to an August 2025 open letter, there was a settlement agreement between FRAC, Franklin Armory, and the ATF, where the ATF waved the white flag, at least for now. We'll see if the White House changes in 2028 or beyond, if ATF suddenly decides to revisit these issues, as I suspect that they might. But again, we will see, all subject to the details of the settlement agreement. And they said, look, we're withdrawing the 2019 open letter. We're going to classify these as other firearms on the 4473. Page 2, kind of the back of the first page. On the 4473, that's the background check form you always have to fill out. The dealer has to check a box for basically long arm, handgun, or other firearm. Very few weapons, there's like a Mossberg, but very few weapons actually fit that classification of other weapon. We're not talking about any other weapon. Now we're back to National Firearms Act. Now we're talking about the sort of weapons that Q, if you're old enough, Q from Bond, right? Not the Star Trek Q. Q. My nerd flag is shining here. But we're talking about Q from Bond, you know, where, hey, all these different hidden weapons, the cane is a weapon, all that kind of stuff, right? Those are AOWs, any other weapons. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a normal, over-the-counter, not the prescription strength NFA, just the over-the-counter firearms that you can get from a 4473. That's what we're talking about here. So what's the payoff to all this? Again, you effectively get something that is like a short barrel rifle, like a short barrel shotgun, but they're not, and there's trade-offs as far as performance goes. However, as long as you understand what those trade-offs are and you use it within those trade-offs, what are you really missing out on? Here's perhaps the single biggest outcome from the whole thing. This legal outcome cements the fact that manufacturers, innovators, inventors can go out there and deliberately target some of these ridiculous federal regulations and target it bluntly with capitalism, and then of course protect it with patents. Because Franklin Armory cannot be going through all these different lawsuits, all this different R&D invention if people are just going to rip it off on the back end. They're going to get their payoff. I hope they get their payday, but this is what it is. This is going to be incentivizing entrepreneurs to go out there and to keep targeting things like others have as well in other categories. Pistol braces, force reset triggers, you name it. Now, of course, the downside to all of this is we all know that, let's call it creative compliance or creative non-compliance, where you're deliberately pushing the boundaries and the definitions as far as what's out there, could attract a lot of negative attention when the gun grabbers are back in control, whether it's in DC or in your state, you name it. They already have the attention. I'm sorry, but they do. So I'm not really sure how to answer that argument other than saying, look, they want to ban everything anyways. So what's necessarily really the harm at the end of the day? I'm really curious to hear what you think about that down in the comment field below, whether this kind of stuff just makes things worse and more likely to have bans, or hey, if it's trying to come anyways, we may as well do the most that we can to push things out there. To my perspective, something that I do like about all this is that it allows us to go on the offense and it moves the battle lines back away from other things into kind of a new frontier. If we're fighting these battles, that means we're not fighting battles about whether or not it's lawful to conceal carry a handgun that has the capacity to hold more than 10 rounds, right? Something ridiculous like that. I want the battle lines as far away from there as possible. That's something that I can appreciate that is a really profound positive about this. Let me know what you think about all this in the discussion field below. I look forward to personally reviewing those after some hockey games I'm going to be in. Let's close out with our ever popular quote of the day. This one comes from the one, the only, not Marcus Aurelius, Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great. Quote, "Through every generation of the human race, there has been a constant war. A war with fear. Those who have the courage to conquer it are made free, and those who are conquered by it are made to suffer until they have the courage to defeat it or death takes them." I appreciate you sticking around. Be sure to hit that like button, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you enjoyed this one, please feel free to check out some of our other great content, and we'll see you in the next one.